Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everyone. Today, I want to talk about something that operates not just in the heart, but deep in the brain: the addiction to emotional patterns. Specifically, why men are often drawn to women who detach emotionally. Now, this isn't about blame, it's about awareness, because until we become aware of the subconscious programs running our lives, we're destined to repeat the same cycles over and over again. But the good news, you have the power to change it. The human brain is an incredible organ, capable of adapting, learning, and evolving throughout our lives. But it also has a tendency to cling to what is familiar, even when that familiarity doesn't serve our best interests. This is especially true when it comes to emotions. Many people don't realize that emotions are not just fleeting feelings, they are chemical reactions in the brain and body. When we experience certain emotions repeatedly, our brains become conditioned to seek out situations that recreate those same feelings, even if those feelings are negative or painful. This is how we become addicted to familiar emotions. Think about it. The brain's primary function is survival. It likes what it knows because the known feels safe. Even if the known is stress, anxiety, or emotional rejection, the brain would rather stick with what's predictable than venture into the unknown. This is why people often find themselves drawn to the same kinds of relationships or situations, even when those experiences are harmful. It's not because they consciously want to feel pain or rejection, but because their brains are wired to seek out the emotional states they've become accustomed to. When a man becomes addicted to the emotional roller coaster of being with an emotionally detached woman, it's often because that detachment triggers familiar feelings, feelings of unworthiness, inadequacy, or rejection. These might be emotions he first experienced in childhood, perhaps from a parent who was emotionally unavailable or inconsistent. Over time, these feelings became ingrained in his emotional blueprint. As he grows older, he unconsciously seeks out relationships that mirror those early emotional experiences because they feel familiar. The body and brain are working together to recreate the chemical cocktail they've grown used to, even if it's toxic. This emotional addiction works similarly to how the body becomes dependent on substances like sugar, caffeine, or even drugs. When you experience an emotion, your brain releases specific chemicals. For example, stress releases cortisol and adrenaline, while happiness triggers dopamine and serotonin. The more often you feel a particular emotion, the more your body gets used to the chemical balance that emotion creates. Over time, your body starts to crave those chemicals, leading you to unconsciously seek out situations that produce them. So, if you've spent years feeling rejected or unworthy, your body becomes conditioned to those feelings, and your brain will steer you toward relationships or experiences that recreate that emotional state. What makes this even more challenging is that we often mistake this emotional familiarity for attraction or passion. When someone emotionally withdraws from us, it triggers our brain's reward system. We start chasing their approval, hoping to win them back because every little bit of attention they give us feels like a reward. This is the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. The intermittent rewards keep us hooked. The brain releases dopamine when we get that occasional validation, reinforcing the behavior and making us come back for more. But here's the crucial part. Just because the brain is addicted to familiar emotions doesn't mean we're doomed to repeat the same patterns forever. The brain is also incredibly plastic, meaning it can change and rewire itself. This is where awareness comes into play. The first step to breaking free from emotional addiction is recognizing the pattern. When you can step back and observe your own behavior without judgment, you create space between the emotion and the reaction. You start to see the situation for what it is, a familiar pattern, not a reflection of your worth. Once you become aware of the emotional cycles you're caught in, you can begin to disrupt them. This might involve practices like meditation, journaling, or therapy, where you consciously explore the roots of these emotions and start to reframe your experiences. By repeatedly exposing yourself to new, healthier emotional experiences, you teach your brain and body to crave different feelings. Instead of being drawn to relationships that trigger rejection and unworthiness, you begin to seek out connections that foster security, respect, and genuine affection. Visualization is another powerful tool in this process. The brain doesn't know the difference between a real experience and a vividly imagined one. When you regularly visualize yourself in fulfilling, emotionally healthy relationships, your brain begins to form new neural pathways. It starts to get used to the idea of emotional availability and stability. Over time, this becomes your new emotional baseline, and you find yourself less attracted to situations that trigger your old patterns. Ultimately, understanding that the brain is addicted to familiar emotions is liberating. It means that the cycles you've been stuck in aren't a result of personal failure, they're a result of deeply ingrained neural programming. And just as that programming was created, it can be rewritten. You have the power to choose new emotional experiences, to break free from the past, and to create a life where your relationships reflect your true worth and potential. The human brain is wired for survival, but it's also wired for pleasure. One of the key players in this pleasure seeking system is dopamine, a neurotransmitter often referred to as the feel good chemical. Dopamine is responsible for the feelings of reward and satisfaction we experience when we achieve something, whether it's as simple as completing a task, eating a delicious meal, or receiving a compliment. But while dopamine plays a crucial role in motivation and pleasure, it can also trap us in unhealthy emotional cycles, especially in relationships. This is what happens in the dopamine chase, a cycle of reward and withdrawal that keeps people hooked, often to emotionally unavailable partners. When a man becomes involved with an emotionally detached woman, his brain can enter into a pattern strikingly similar to what we see in addiction. It's not just about the person, it's about the biochemical reactions happening in his brain. At the beginning of the relationship or during fleeting moments of connection, the woman might show affection, attention, or validation. This positive interaction triggers a surge of dopamine, creating a feeling of excitement, satisfaction, and emotional high. The brain registers this as a reward, reinforcing the idea that this person is valuable and worth pursuing. However, when the woman pulls away, becomes emotionally distant, or withdraws, the man experiences the opposite, an emotional withdrawal. This withdrawal is uncomfortable and even painful because the brain has become accustomed to those dopamine highs. The sudden absence of emotional connection creates a craving for that lost reward. This craving can manifest as anxiety, obsessive thinking, and a desperate need to regain the other person's attention. It's the brain's way of saying, I need another hit. This push pull dynamic, getting just enough affection to feel hopeful, followed by periods of emotional withdrawal, creates an unpredictable pattern. And it's this unpredictability that makes the dopamine chase so powerful. Studies in behavioral psychology show that intermittent reinforcement, receiving rewards at irregular intervals, is the most effective way to create strong, lasting habits. This is the same principle that keeps people glued to slot machines and casinos. The uncertainty of when the next reward will come keeps the brain engaged, constantly seeking that next dopamine rush. In relationships, this intermittent reinforcement creates emotional dependency. When a man doesn't know when he'll next receive attention or affection, he becomes more invested in trying to win it. Every small sign of connection feels magnified, making him overlook the larger pattern of emotional detachment. He might rationalize the other person's behavior, thinking maybe if I try harder, they'll open up, or it's my fault they're distant. This leads to an emotional loop where he is continually chasing the next high, unable to break free even when the relationship is clearly unfulfilling. What's even more deceptive about the dopamine chase is that it can be mistaken for passion or love. The highs and lows create intense emotional experiences which the brain interprets as deep connection, but in reality, what's happening is more about chemical dependency than genuine intimacy. True love is steady, secure, and nurturing. It doesn't leave you feeling anxious or unsure of your worth, but the dopamine chase thrives on instability and unpredictability, tricking you into believing that the emotional roller coaster is a sign of something meaningful. Breaking free from this cycle requires more than just willpower. It requires a conscious effort to understand and rewire the brain's reward system. The first step is awareness. Recognizing that you're caught in a dopamine-driven cycle of reward and withdrawal is crucial. When you can step back and observe your behavior, you begin to see the pattern for what it is, a biochemical loop. not a reflection of your value or the quality of the relationship. Once you've identified the pattern, the next step is to create new sources of dopamine that are healthy and fulfilling. This might involve pursuing hobbies, building strong friendships, or setting and achieving personal goals. By redirecting your focus toward activities that provide consistent and positive rewards, you teach your brain that it doesn't need to rely on unpredictable relationships for pleasure and satisfaction. Another powerful tool in breaking the dopamine chase is mindfulness and meditation. These practices help you stay grounded in the present moment, reducing the anxiety and obsessive thinking that often accompany emotional withdrawal. When you can sit with discomfort without immediately seeking to escape it, you build resilience and begin to detach from the need for constant external validation. Finally, it's essential to redefine what love and connection mean to you. When you realize that healthy relationships are based on mutual respect, emotional availability, and consistent support, you'll be less drawn to the highs and lows of emotionally unavailable partners. Instead of chasing fleeting moments of affection, you'll start to seek relationships that offer stability, trust, and genuine intimacy. In the end, understanding the dopamine chase is empowering. It helps you see that the emotional roller coaster you're on isn't a reflection of your worth or the depth of your feelings. It's a chemical loop that can be broken. By becoming aware of this pattern and consciously choosing healthier sources of connection and fulfillment, you can free yourself from the cycle of reward and withdrawal and move toward relationships that truly nourish your heart and soul. Our lives are shaped by countless experiences, many of which we don't consciously remember or even recognize. These experiences form the foundation of our subconscious beliefs, influencing how we see ourselves and interact with the world around us. One of the most powerful of these beliefs is tied to self-worth, the deep, often hidden sense of how valuable, deserving, and lovable we believe we are. While we might consciously tell ourselves that we deserve love and happiness, our subconscious mind may be running a completely different script, one that quietly sabotages our relationships and personal growth. From an early age, we begin to form beliefs about ourselves based on how we're treated and what we experience. For example, if a child grows up in an environment where love and approval are conditional based on achievements, behavior, or meeting certain expectations, they may internalize the belief that they have to earn love. This belief doesn't just disappear with age, it becomes embedded in the subconscious and influences how that person approaches relationships later in life. Even as adults, we might find ourselves drawn to situations or people that reinforce these early beliefs because they feel familiar, even if they're painful. In the context of relationships, subconscious beliefs of self-worth can lead men to become addicted to emotionally unavailable women. If a man holds the deep-seated belief that he's not inherently worthy of love, he may unconsciously seek out partners who validate that belief by withholding affection or emotional connection. When a woman detaches emotionally, it triggers feelings of rejection and inadequacy, aligning perfectly with the man's internal narrative of unworthiness. Even though this dynamic is painful, it feels familiar, and the subconscious mind is drawn to what it knows. This dynamic often plays out in subtle ways. A man might find himself constantly trying to prove his worth to a partner who remains distant, believing that if he just works harder, says the right thing, or becomes the perfect partner, he'll finally earn her love. This chase can become all-consuming because it feels like the stakes are incredibly high. After all, if he can win over someone who's emotionally unavailable, it might feel like he's finally disproving that deep-seated belief of being unworthy. But in reality, the more he chases, the more he reinforces the very belief he's trying to escape. The subconscious mind is incredibly powerful because it operates beneath our conscious awareness, influencing our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors without us even realizing it. It's like a program running in the background, quietly guiding our decisions and interpretations of the world. And unless we bring these subconscious beliefs to the surface, we'll continue to live by them, even when they no longer serve us. But here's the good news. Subconscious beliefs can be changed. The first and most important step is awareness. You can't change a belief you don't know exists. This means taking the time to reflect on your past experiences and how they might have shaped your current self perception. Ask yourself questions like, what did I learn about love growing up? Did I feel valued for who I was or for what I did? Do I believe I'm worthy of love just as I am? Or do I feel I have to earn it? Once you've identified the beliefs that are holding you back, the next step is to challenge and reframe them. This involves consciously questioning the validity of those beliefs and replacing them with healthier, more empowering narratives. For example, if you've always believed that you have to work for love, you can begin to affirm that you are worthy of love simply because you exist. This isn't about repeating empty affirmations. It's about genuinely shifting your internal narrative through consistent intentional thought. Visualization and meditation can be powerful tools in this process. The brain doesn't differentiate between real experiences and vividly imagined ones. By regularly visualizing yourself in relationships where you are loved, valued, and accepted without having to chase or prove yourself, you begin to rewire your brain's neural pathways. Over time, this new emotional experience becomes your subconscious default, replacing the old belief of unworthiness. It's also important to surround yourself with people who reflect your new beliefs. And when you start to believe you're worthy of love and respect, you'll naturally gravitate toward relationships that align with that belief. You'll be less tolerant of partners who are emotionally unavailable or dismissive because they no longer fit your self position. Instead, you'll seek out connections that are nurturing, supportive, and fulfilling. Breaking free from subconscious beliefs of self-worth isn't an overnight process. It requires patience, consistency, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths about your past and yourself. But the reward is profound. When you shift your internal narrative, you don't just change how you feel about yourself, you change the entire trajectory of your life. You move from being a passive participant in your relationships to an empowered creator of your experiences. In the end, understanding and transforming your subconscious beliefs about self-worth is one of the most liberating things you can do. It opens the door to healthier relationships, greater self-confidence, and a deeper sense of fulfillment. You no longer have to chase love or prove your value to anyone. You recognize that you are inherently worthy, and from that place of inner security, you attract relationships and experiences that reflect your true worth, the illusion of control is a psychological phenomenon where people believe they have more influence over outcomes than they actually do. In relationships, this illusion can be both compelling and destructive, especially when it comes to dynamics involving emotionally unavailable partners. For many men, the idea that they can somehow fix, change, or win over a distant partner becomes an all-consuming mission. But beneath this drive lies a deeper truth. The illusion of control often masks feelings of insecurity, fear of rejection, and unresolved emotional wounds. At its core, the illusion of control offers a false sense of security. When faced with unpredictable or emotionally detached partners, the mind seeks ways to regain stability. It convinces us that if we just say the right things, behave in a certain way, or try hard enough, we can influence how the other person feels or responds. This belief is comforting because it suggests that the outcome of the relationship is within our power. It feels less threatening to believe that we can earn someone's love than to accept the painful reality that we might not be able to control their emotional availability at all. This dynamic often begins in childhood. If a man grew up in an environment where love was inconsistent or conditional, he may have learned to equate love with effort. Perhaps he had to act a certain way to gain a parent's approval or affection. Over time, this creates a subconscious belief that love must be earned through control, whether by being perfect, accommodating, or constantly striving to meet someone else's needs. As adults, these patterns resurface in relationships. When faced with emotional detachment, the instinct is to try harder, to fix the situation, believing that if I can just do enough, they'll love me back. But the reality is, we can't control other people's emotions, behaviors, or willingness to engage, no matter how much effort we put in. We can't force someone to be emotionally available if they're not ready or capable. The harder we try to control the situation, the more frustrated and powerless we feel when our efforts don't lead to the desired outcome. This creates a vicious cycle. The more we try to control, the more we feel out of control, and the deeper we fall into emotional dependence. The illusion of control is also fueled by intermittent reinforcement, the occasional moments when an emotionally detached partner offers attention or affection. These rare instances feel like a win, reinforcing the belief that our efforts are working. But in reality, these moments are often fleeting and inconsistent, keeping us hooked in the cycle of chasing and hoping. This unpredictability is what makes the dynamic so addictive, much like gambling. The occasional reward keeps us invested even when the overall experience is harmful. Letting go of the illusion of control requires a profound shift in perspective. It starts with recognizing that control is not the same as influence. While we can influence situations by communicating clearly, setting boundaries, and showing up authentically, we cannot dictate how others respond. True empowerment comes from understanding the difference between what we can control, our own actions, thoughts, and feelings, and what we cannot, other people's emotions, decisions, and behaviors. One of the most liberating realizations is that we are not responsible for fixing or saving others. Many men fall into the trap of believing that if they can just be better or do more, they can heal their partner's emotional wounds. But this is a heavy and unrealistic burden to carry. Everyone is responsible for their own healing and growth. By trying to control or manage someone else's emotional state, we not only exhaust ourselves, but also deny them the opportunity to take responsibility for their own journey. Breaking free from the illusion of control involves shifting the focus inward. Instead of trying to manage someone else's behavior, we can ask ourselves, why am I drawn to this dynamic? What unmet needs or unresolved wounds are driving my desire to control? Often the need to control is rooted in our own fears, fear of abandonment, fear of not being good enough, or fear of vulnerability. By addressing these underlying fears, we begin to reclaim our power and break the cycle of emotional dependency. Practices like mindfulness and self-reflection can be incredibly helpful in this process. Mindfulness teaches us to stay present with our emotions without trying to fix or control them. It allows us to observe our thoughts and feelings with compassion and curiosity rather than judgment. Over time, this creates a sense of inner stability that doesn't rely on external circumstances. We begin to realize that we don't need to control others to feel secure or worthy. Setting healthy boundaries is another crucial step in releasing the illusion of control. Boundaries are not about controlling others, they're about protecting our own well-being. When we set clear boundaries around what we will and won't tolerate in relationships, we create space for healthier dynamics to emerge. We no longer feel the need to chase or fix because we've established a foundation of self-respect and self-worth. Ultimately, letting go of the illusion of control is about embracing acceptance and surrender. This doesn't mean giving up or resigning ourselves to unhealthy situations. It means accepting reality as it is, without trying to force it into something it's not. It means surrendering the need to manage other people's emotions and instead focusing on our own growth and fulfillment. When we release the illusion of control, we free ourselves from the exhausting cycle of chasing love and validation. We learn to trust that we are enough just as we are, and that healthy, fulfilling relationships come from mutual respect and emotional availability, not from trying to fix or control someone else. In this freedom, we discover a deeper sense of peace, empowerment, and authentic connection. And breaking the cycle of emotional dependency and unhealthy relationship patterns begins with a single powerful step: awareness. Without awareness, we remain trapped in subconscious loops, reacting to life based on old beliefs, unhealed wounds, and automatic behaviors. But once we shine a light on these hidden patterns, we gain the power to change them. Awareness is the key that unlocks the door to transformation, allowing us to step out of the roles we've been unconsciously playing and into a life of intentionality, self-love, and healthier connections. For many men, the cycle of becoming addicted to emotionally unavailable women is not just about the relationship itself. It's a reflection of deeper, unresolved issues within. These patterns don't arise out of nowhere. They are often rooted in childhood experiences, early attachments, and subconscious beliefs about love and self-worth. But when we operate on autopilot, we don't see these connections. Instead, we focus on the external, what the other person is doing or not doing, how we can change them, or why things never seem to work out. This outward focus keeps us stuck because it distracts us from the real work that needs to happen inside. Awareness begins with self-reflection. It's about turning inward and asking the tough questions. Why am I drawn to people who are emotionally unavailable? What am I really seeking in these relationships? Do I feel worthy of love without having to prove myself? These questions can be uncomfortable, even painful, because they force us to confront parts of ourselves we might rather avoid. But this discomfort is a necessary part of growth. It's in facing these truths that we begin to see the patterns clearly and understand the role we've been playing in perpetuating them. One of the most common realizations that comes with awareness is recognizing the difference between love and familiarity. Often, what we think is love is actually just a repetition of what feels familiar. If we grew up in environments where love was inconsistent, conditional, or absent, we may subconsciously seek out relationships that mirror those dynamics. They feel right, not because they're healthy, but because they align with our internal blueprint of what love looks like. Awareness helps us see that just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it's good for us. It allows us to question whether we're truly experiencing love or simply reliving old emotional patterns. Another critical aspect of awareness is understanding our emotional triggers. Triggers are the emotional reactions we have to certain situations, often disproportionate to the event itself. For example, when an emotionally unavailable partner pulls away, it might trigger intense feelings of rejection, abandonment, or unworthiness. These reactions are usually tied to past wounds that haven't been fully processed. By becoming aware of our triggers, we can start to separate the past from the present. We realize that while the current situation might be painful, it's also resurfacing old emotions that need healing. This awareness creates space between the trigger and our response, allowing us to choose how we want to react instead of falling into automatic patterns. Mindfulness practices can be incredibly helpful in cultivating this kind of awareness. Mindfulness is the practice of staying present and observing our thoughts and emotions without judgment. It teaches us to become witnesses to our inner world, noticing the patterns and stories we tell ourselves without getting lost in them. For example, when we notice feelings of anxiety or obsession about a partner's behavior, mindfulness allows us to step back and observe these feelings. I'm feeling anxious because I haven't heard from them. This anxiety is familiar. Where else have I felt this way in my life? This simple act of observation can be transformative. It helps us detach from the intensity of the emotion and view it from a place of curiosity and compassion. As we deepen our awareness, we also begin to see the importance of boundaries, not just with others, but with ourselves. Boundaries are about recognizing what we will and won't tolerate, both in our relationships and in our own behavior. For instance, if we notice a pattern of constantly checking our phone, obsessing over a partner's messages, or compromising our values to gain approval, awareness allows us to set limits on these behaviors. We might decide, I will not chase after someone who's clearly not interested. I will respect myself enough to walk away from situations that don't honor my worth. These boundaries are acts of self-love and self-respect, and they become easier to enforce as our awareness grows. Another powerful outcome of awareness is the ability to reframe our experiences. Instead of seeing failed relationships or emotional struggles as personal failures, we begin to view them as opportunities for growth. Each relationship becomes a mirror, reflecting back the areas within ourselves that need healing and attention. When we shift our perspective in this way, we move from a victim mindset to one of empowerment. We realize that while we may not have control over others, we always have control over how we respond and grow from our experiences. Journaling can be a valuable tool in this process. Writing down our thoughts, feelings, and observations helps to clarify what's going on inside and track our progress over time. We can document our triggers, patterns, and the insights we gain from our reflections. Over time, this practice reveals how far we've come and helps reinforce the new beliefs and behaviors we're cultivating. Ultimately, breaking the cycle through awareness is about reclaiming our power. It's about realizing that we are not at the mercy of our past, our subconscious beliefs, or other people's actions. We have the ability to observe, understand, and change the patterns that no longer serve us. This doesn't mean the journey is easy. Awareness often brings up painful emotions and uncomfortable truths, but it's through this process that true transformation happens. With awareness, we learn to choose relationships that align with our values and support our growth. We stop chasing love from those who cannot give it and start cultivating love and respect within ourselves. This shift doesn't just change our relationships, it changes our entire lives. We move from a place of reaction to a place of intention, creating a life that reflects our true worth and deepest desires. Creating a new emotional future is about consciously stepping out of old, limiting patterns, and designing a life filled with healthier relationships, self-love, and emotional freedom. It's the process of rewiring your mind and emotions to align with the future you want to experience, rather than remaining stuck in the emotional cycles of the past. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but with intention, practice, and patience, it's absolutely possible to reshape your emotional landscape and attract the kind of relationships and experiences that truly fulfill you. At the heart of this process is the understanding that your thoughts and emotions shape your reality. Every time you think a thought, your brain fires neural circuits that reinforce specific patterns. When you consistently think negative thoughts, like, I'm not worthy of love, or I always attract the wrong people, you strengthen the neural pathways that keep you trapped in those beliefs. But here's the empowering part. Just as your brain can be wired into negative patterns, it can also be rewired to create new positive emotional experiences. This is the foundation of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt throughout your life. To create a new emotional future, you must first become aware of the emotions and thoughts that no longer serve you. This requires honest reflection. Ask yourself, what emotional patterns am I ready to let go of? Do I often feel unworthy, anxious, or desperate in relationships? Am I stuck in cycles of fear, rejection, or self-doubt? Once you've identified these patterns, you can begin the process of releasing them. This isn't about denying or suppressing your emotions. It's about acknowledging them, understanding where they come from, and choosing to no longer let them dictate your future. The next step is to envision the emotional future you desire. What kind of person do you want to be in your relationships? How do you want to feel on a daily basis? Maybe you want to feel confident, loved, secure, and peaceful. Maybe you envision yourself in a relationship where you're respected, valued, and emotionally fulfilled, whatever your vision is. The key is to make it vivid and specific. Close your eyes and imagine the version of yourself who already lives this reality. How do you carry yourself? What kind of people do you attract? How do you respond to challenges or emotional triggers? Visualization is a powerful tool because the brain doesn't distinguish between real experiences and vividly imagined ones. When you regularly visualize yourself embodying your desired emotional state, you begin to rewire your brain to accept this as your new reality. Over time, your subconscious mind starts to align with these new patterns, and you naturally begin to make choices and attract situations that reflect your vision. But visualization alone isn't enough. To truly create a new emotional future, you need to align your daily actions and habits with your desired reality. This means consistently showing up as the person you want to become, even before you fully feel like that person. If you want to feel confident and worthy of love, start practicing self-love and confidence in small, tangible ways. Set healthy boundaries in your relationships. Speak kindly to yourself and engage in activities that make you feel empowered. The more you act in alignment with your future self, the more you reinforce those new emotional patterns. Another critical aspect of creating a new emotional future is releasing attachment to the outcome. When we're overly attached to specific people, situations, or outcomes, we often fall back into old patterns of control and fear. Instead, focus on the emotional state you want to cultivate, regardless of external circumstances. For example, if you want to feel loved and secure, practice generating those feelings from within rather than depending on someone else to provide them. This doesn't mean you won't desire meaningful relationships or external successes, but it means your emotional well being is no longer dependent on them. Gratitude is another powerful tool in this transformation. By focusing on what you're grateful for in the present, you shift your emotional state from lack and scarcity to abundance and fulfillment. Gratitude trains your brain to notice the positive aspects of your life and reinforces the belief that good things are already happening for you. This creates a positive feedback loop where your elevated emotional state attracts even more positive experiences into your life. As you move forward in creating your new emotional future, it's essential to practice self compassion. Change is a process, and there will be times when you fall back into old patterns or feel stuck. Instead of criticizing yourself, recognize that setbacks are a natural part of growth. Each time you notice yourself slipping into old habits, gently bring your focus back to your vision and remind yourself of the progress you've made. Celebrate your small wins and acknowledge the courage it takes to create lasting change. Surrounding yourself with supportive people who align with your new emotional future is also crucial. Relationships are mirrors, reflecting back the beliefs and energy we carry within. As you shift your internal world, you'll naturally start to attract people who resonate with your new emotional state. Seek out friendships and communities that uplift, inspire, and support your growth. Let go of relationships that keep you tethered to the past or drain your energy. Finally, trust the process. Creating a new emotional future is not a linear journey. There will be highs and lows, moments of clarity and times of confusion. But as long as you stay committed to your vision and continue to show up for yourself, you will see transformation. Trust that the universe, your subconscious mind, and your own inner strength are working together to guide you toward the life you desire. In the end, creating a new emotional future is about stepping into your power as the creator of your own reality. It's about realizing that you are not defined by your past or limited by old emotional patterns. You have the ability to choose how you want to feel, how you want to show up in the world, and what kind of relationships you want to cultivate. By aligning your thoughts, emotions, and actions with your highest vision, you open the door to a life filled with love, fulfillment, and true emotional freedom.